Hello, and this is Mike Garner from MrMikeGarner.com, coming to you to help you overcome the obstacles that stand in the way of your health, happiness and success in life and business. It's possible you're watching this in MBS group, and I'll post it as part of my normal talks on a Sunday, which I call a Sunday sermon, but it's not a sermon. I'm not here to preach and teach. I'm here to share because I care. And I have the MBS group because I'm training people, teaching people, sharing with people. We are a community, a group, a closed group. We raise money for charity, and I share techniques so that the people in the group can overcome their obstacles and teach other people to overcome the many obstacles in life, because these obstacles do inhibit our health, happiness and success in life and business, and it's because of lack of understanding. Not that anybody's stupid, we are geniuses, we are super clever, but we don't understand how life works. We don't understand how we work. We don't understand the nature of reality. We don't understand our potentiality. We don't understand how the mind works and how that impacts on our thoughts, and how our thoughts impact on our emotions and our physiology, and how that ultimately impacts on our biology. So that's a big opening statement. So I'm sharing this stuff because I've studied it for 50 years through martial arts, excuse me, and healing arts. And I never say that I'm right. I just offer this for your consideration, and I'm very open to hearing what you've got to offer me for my consideration, because that's communication. And I'm watching Downton Abbey at the moment, which I've mentioned before on one of my journeys, talking to you hands-free, driving around witnessing the world, which is a series that I put both on YouTube and my Mr Mike Garner Facebook channel. Just chatting, communicating, expressing, sharing. And because there's not enough of that, too many people are going around looking at their mobile phones like this, they're just, kids particularly, well, a lot of millennials, and that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about generations, and I want to talk about society and expectations. And watching Downton Abbey, it brings to mind the dates, because it's all dated in generic episode 1, episode 2, episode 3. And it started off something like 1912, and then it comes through the First World War, and it's that upstairs, downstairs Victorian values, where you've got the landowners, the gentry, the aristocracy, the bankers, the doctors, and a lot of them are hereditary positions. They've not earned it. Downton Abbey, the story, and if you watch it and you listen to the genealogy, the family tree, and how those people got those positions, they were all public schooled, which means private school. Public school isn't there for the public, it's there for the rich and famous, the elite. Not state schools, where they taught things, and still today, where taught how to work, taught how to obey, taught about authority. They're not taught how to be in control. They taught how to take control, how to take orders, more to the point. And when you look at, in those days, the schooling system, the public schools, the paid schools, the private schools, those pupils went along and, they were even respected by the teachers, not suppressed by the teachers, not taught down to, because the teachers would be on a good salary in comparison to the general public, but they'd be calling their pupils sir and madam and lord and duke and duchess, because those children had hereditary titles. And exactly the same happened when somebody from an elite family, a privileged family, born into a exclusive family, went to war. He wouldn't be in the trenches, he'd be made an officer, even if he was thick as shit. Even if he had no aptitude to fighting or technology, or even if he was lazy, he would have a man to look after him, to dress him, to look after him. He'd be kept safe. Same as exactly what happens to our royal family when they go to war. They're not at the front line. They've got all the medals for attending tours of duty, but they don't dress themselves. They don't, that they are groomed to become officers, and then they become the warlords. They become, they are the representatives of the country in a uniform, kept safe. All these stories that, Prince Philip served here and served there. Well, he was served. So was Prince Charles. I mean, brave maybe, but not like my son would have been, or my daughter would have been, or your son and daughter, had they served. They would have been cannon fodder. There's no way these elite families back in the 1920s or in the 2020s are cannon fodder. They're kept safe. They've flown into these conflicts in helicopters, first class. They're kept first class. They have protectors. They have a different menu. They have their own food. They have wine. They attend meetings. The aristocracy look after their own. And there's nothing more evident than that when you watch Downton Abbey, which is what this is all about. I'm not a socialist. I'm a realist. I'm not a lefty or a righty. I'm a humanist. I believe in what's fair. And I do understand that you have to have people who are intelligent as planners in a conflict, or in industry, or in the family, or in any situation, or in politics. You can't have somebody who is maybe a tradesman doing design. If a tradesman is good with his hands and a designer is good with his head, then that's appropriate. But they're all equally valuable. A designer shouldn't be on £50,000 a year and a tradesman on £20,000, or the other way around. And you certainly shouldn't have people who own a design company with designers and tradesmen who are earning £150,000 a year and more, at the expense of the workers, designers or builders. It should be fairly distributed within a cooperative, and society should reflect that. And you certainly shouldn't have a factory owner who just inherits that with no skills in design, planning, management, or building. This is just a metaphor using that model. Who just gets that from his dad or his mum because he was born into that family, but he's got no capacity to manage that, and no aptitude to it, and no courtesy. And then they take advantage and exploit, which is, you can see everywhere in the world now, and you could see it then. So watching Downton Abbey, you learn a lot about this. And in the storyline I was watching last night, which was quite upsetting really, if you attach to it, which I didn't, I witness it and I'm interested. But there was warnings that it was upsetting, because there's a butler who falls in love and marries a housemaid, and she gets raped by a privileged, entitled guest to the house who's got no decency, and just sees this girl, this housemaid, who any viewers to the film, to the series, have grown an attachment to and understand the storyline. He's very happy in the storyline, in the plot for this girl, this housemaid, and she gets totally abused. And the attitude is, we can't tell and bring the house under shame, so she suffers it. She shuts up. She's a woman, so she doesn't feel that she's got any power. She's a housemaid, so she's got no power. and she puts herself down so she can't tell the master of the house and bring the house under disrepute. I mean, which is all bollocks. But it's exactly what's going on today. You can mirror that with today, with, the elites who are telling the general population, with all the situations that are going on in the moment, which I'm not going to mention. But we've got wars, and we've got, I'll use the word disease, manufactured or otherwise, where our young men and women are going off to fight in conflicts that are politically spurious, for financial gain, for industrial gain. These corporations fund these wars, encourage these wars, perpetuate these wars, learn nothing from these wars. Politicians learn nothing. There's no money for the people in countries, but there's lots of money for war. And there's lots of money when they have an agenda which doesn't benefit the population, and they're just perpetuating their own wealth and their own aristocracy in all the royal families and all the elite families, in all the banking cartels, in all the corporations, all the technocracy. And the people, you, me, we, have to know our place. So there's no learning there. And my grandfather, my great-grandfather, grew up probably born 1905. So when the First World War was upon us, he volunteered. His name was Jack Stoddard, my great uncle, and he was a great man. He went into that war and lied about his age so he could fight for the country, because that was the propaganda at the time, because all the so-called conscientious objectors and anybody who wasn't well to go or just was scared to go was given a white feather, coward. And that was shown in Downton Abbey, which is very harsh. And that was a meme that was generated by the government. Give the women, give the men a white feather. Cruel. And the men went to war, and anybody who was scared to go over the front line, and it was scary. I mean, there was hundreds and thousands of people killed on those poppy fields on the Somme in France. And my uncle was a survivor, and he actually ended up on Radio Piccadilly telling about his exploits and his stories, which were horrendous, and he never talked about it until he was in his 90s. So he died when he was 94, 95, 96, around about 1989. So he's got a good memory of those days, and it's not hard to understand why he had the attitude, the opinion, and the stoicism of that era. And his wife, Maggie, who died about 10 years before he died. And my Auntie Maggie and Uncle Jack used to come on every Boxing Day, and they were very, very old school, because when you look at, as I say, Downton Abbey or Upstairs, Downstairs, or any of those Victorian programmes that teach us about that lifestyle, the attitudes that were enforced upon them, and the class system, and the language and the respect, and the way that they would doff the cap or pull a forelock at the front of the hair, I couldn't do it, to a factory owner, or to a landowner, or to somebody with a car because they had wealth, because not everybody had cars. And a lot of these people who have those positions that you'd have to touch your hat for or pull your forelock were just hereditary, privileged people through families, but nothing's changed. These families still exist. These families, to a large extent, are still running the show, and it's a shit show, and that hasn't changed. It was a shit show then. I mean, they had workhouses. They put people who were in debt in workhouses. People died very young. There was private physicians and doctors and surgeons and nursing care for the rich and famous, and these families were very little for the workers. Very few people owned anything, only the landowners owned things. And in Downton Abbey, there was Downton Abbey, Downton Place, and then the town. And when you watch the series, it tells us a lot about the control that those families had, because they pretty much owned all the village. You know, the they made it almost like funny that, you know, the lady, I think it's Maggie Smith, brilliant actress, who plays the mother in the family, grandmother. She always wins the flower show with her flowers, even though they're not the best, because the people who judge are frightened of letting somebody else win, because she owns the village. The family own the village. They own the pharmacy, they own the school, they own the community centre. Most people who've got shops there are renting the shops and the farms and the outbuildings from the people who own Downton Hall. And it's the same in Llandudno, where I came from. I mean, I'm a Manchester lad, but I lived in, you know, Colwyn Bay for a long time. And the estate within Llandudno, and it was all owned by one family. It was one piece of land, and they built Llandudno town on and Colwyn Bay town. And you've got like Rutland Castle and Greer Castle that would have been in the day the homes, and Conway Castle, of the kings and the royal families, and the rich families even past those battles. And the whole of Moston Broadway was owned by probably the Moston family. How rich were they? That they owned all those houses, all that land, all those houses were built on the land, and the hotels. How fortunate were they? And there's probably still offspring of them. Sons, daughters, granddaughters, great-granddaughters, great-grandsons, and ad infinitum, they're still benefiting. And I've got that level of control over the town council, decision-makings about the future of the town. Because I remember in Llandudno, they tried to put a Alice in Wonderland theme park on Bad Avon Fields, and it was turned down. And I know when Halfords went there, because the AA was associated to Halfords, they tried to turn it into a garage, and they said no, it could only be a retail shop, because the laws of the land stopped people doing welding on the land. You couldn't do welding. That could only be done on the industrial part. Those laws, those regulations, are land regulations controlled by the landowners, and the landowners through generations, and we're not going back that far, and we're talking 100 years, who are controlling society, who dictate what you can do, what you can't do. And these people haven't earned those positions, they were born into them. How interesting. How revealing. And all the people that go to Oxford, Cambridge, Eton, Yale, where our politicians come from, they're all groomed through those elite schools that you and I would never have the opportunity to attend. We haven't got the money, we haven't got the right titles, we haven't got the privilege, the connections. Most of the people left and right of Boris Johnson are people he's schooled with. All his friends, they call it cronyism, and then they share the wealth, and they make the decisions, create the contracts, benefit from the contracts. Never been any different for hundreds of years. What I wanted to talk about really, just as I close this, is the attitudes. It's not difficult to understand watching that programme why my great-grandfather, Uncle Jack and Auntie Maggie were like they were, and they were lovely people. They were they had standards that were imposed upon them, and I admire them for having high standards. But look at what's going on today. I mean, look at the kids of today. I'm 64, and I don't recognise myself in children of today. And how's it going to be in the next 10, 20 years? It's scary, isn't it? The way that society's been manipulated by these government think tanks, full of these people from these elite schools that you and me will never attend. Members of families who are imposing rules, regulations in society, what they call social hypnosis, moulding society, controlling trends, dictating outcomes, making decisions that affect you and me, but don't affect them at all. You can see that now in America. Nancy Pelosi, Biden, Obama, the Clintons. Dreadful people, in my opinion. The Australian government, what's happening in New Zealand and France and Germany, showing the true colours, pretending we have a democracy, but actually just protecting their own and telling us what to do and doing something completely different themselves. It's that upstairs, downstairs being repeated. Them and us, the elite, the privileged, and we're the workers. We're the lower classes. And it used to be within society that we had lower, middle, and upper classes. And lower middle and upper middle, and people were always pushing themselves in categories. Well, what they've done with the recent shake-up, I use that word, with what's going on in the world at the moment, and you know what I'm talking about, is they've levelled everybody. They normally just, these elites attack the workers. That's why workers' rights were eroded under Margaret Thatcher and before. There were so many uprisings, miners' strikes, transport strikes. Arthur Scargill happened in Poland with Solidarity, Lech Wałęsa. It's happened all over the world. When, after the wars, there was an uprising of the people, and people were allowed to make their own money, and it didn't necessarily matter what families you came from. There was this concept of entrepreneurs and new money, maybe under New Labour, Blair, but the Blairite philosophy was pretty much conservatism with a different hat on, because a lot of people don't realise that Tony Blair and Margaret Thatcher were cousins. It's all the same families, if you do your research, all the same families. That and Google, if you want to do your research, Google the family that Gates comes from, Bill Gates and Zuckerberg and all those people, and what they stood for and who they were, because they're all part of a eugenics movement associated to, I won't use the word, but you know what a swastika is. So the people who used to use the swastika as an emblem, those people and certain members of our royal family were supporting their movement that was into eugenics, population control, and creating an Aryan race of purist genetics, blue-eyed, blonde-haired race. I'd have been all right. I used to have blonde hair and I got blue eyes, so I'd have been all right. But it was evil. And their kids and grandkids and great-grandkids are still in positions of power today, continuing that agenda. Arnold Schwarzenegger's father was a member of that party that used the swastika as their logo. Surprising, isn't it? And a lot of that regime was funded through our royal family. Do your research. I mean, we were told that our king abdicated the throne. You know, the Edward and Mrs Simpson story, which was all made romantic. No, 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 no. British intelligence realised he was collaborating with the people who used the swastika as a logo. Do your research. Not much has changed. Above the pantomime that we're being shown is a very dark reality. It's called the shadow government, who's really running the show. And the people that we see at the front, the Macrons and the Johnsons and the Bidens and wherever else you look, they're just players. They're just given scripts. They're not making the decisions. It's the people behind them that make the decisions. Trilateral Commission, United Nations. Bilderberg Group, and so many others. Committee for Foreign Relations, World Economic Forum, World Health Organization. Those are the people that are really running it. And in the past, for Britain, it was the European, the EU, European Union, unelected people from these families, privileged people who have only got their own interests at heart, not the population, unelected, undemocratic, from the same families that have come through the same schools, looking after each other and using us as workers to the end of suppressing society to sustain their control. And I think if you haven't watched Downton Abbey or anything like that, or if you don't like that sort of thing, but you just want to read about the progression of society over the last 100 years. So if you look at where this is going, within the last 2 years, it's been a massive acceleration of this agenda, if you like. And you can read it. You can Google lockstep. You can Google the Great Reset. They've been talking about this for 20, 30 years, but obviously it's not in the press. And anybody that talks about it gets deleted, deplatformed. And you've got to ask yourself what that's about. Anybody with a brain cell must realise that there's something going on and it's not right. There's no debate. You can only debate when you're able to hear all sides of the argument, and you're not being able to hear all sides of the argument. You just get in, like I said, with the First World War, where you were told to do this, and if you didn't, you were a coward and you got a white feather. Well, now you're being told to do this, and there's no white feathers anymore, but you're being deplatformed, and you should hear the rhetoric of people who aren't doing what the government are telling them to do at the moment. It's evil. And all this infighting that's going on with Black Lives Matter and the transgender agenda and, all things related to this, the jab and this, and everything that we were told that was going to happen hasn't. And what we were told they wouldn't do, they're doing. And it's never been any different. Historically, within society, there is this control and suppression, this yin and yang, this good and evil, this dark and light. So the people that I'm talking to about this morning, predominantly in my MBS group, we will now be fighting with light against the dark. It's a metaphysical war that's played out on the stage of the world, because all of this is an illusion. You probably don't understand that, and that might be a step too far for some of you. But we live in a holographic reality, and it's just a projection. But when you go to bed tonight and dream something, it feels real, and when you wake up, it feels real. But you're told that your dreams aren't real. And that when you wake up, that is real. That's because schooling never tells you about reality, about the potentiality of your thoughts, and that thoughts create form. But it's an illusion. So having said everything that I've said for the last 30 minutes, 15 seconds, it's just an illusion. It's not real, and it's not who you are. And if you attach to it, then you suffer because of it. And you don't have to. You can rise above it. And I'm not going to go into how you do that, because that's my whole process with the sharing MBS group and other platforms. And you can Google all my YouTube videos, hints and tips, nuggets of wisdom, witnessing the world, all on YouTube for free. Talking to you with a brew, and now talk to me hands-free as I drive around. If you want to do some development and actually learn the structure and the theory, if you like, and the practice of metaphysics, plugging into your extra senses, releasing the genius within you that you are, becoming the Christ. And Christ just means anointed one. I'm not being blasphemous there. And you are an anointed one. You are a genius. You are unlimited. You are amazing, but you're not taught that. You're not put on a pedestal. You're kept down, which is part of the agenda and always has been. And even these elites aren't sovereign over you, and they're not sovereign over themselves. That's just another path to doom and gloom and darkness. Even though in the world they might be driving around in Rolls Royces, have footmen, waitresses, VIP flights, VIP food, VIP hotels. It only lasts them 50, 60, 70 years. They don't realise as children what's going on. And by the time they get into adulthood at maybe 10, 11, 12, 13 and beyond, they might get another 60 years. That's a splash in the ocean in eternity. So let them enjoy it for the short period of time that they're here. See it for what it is. Don't envy them. Don't covet it. Don't be jealous. I wouldn't want that life. I'm far happier knowing who I am, where I am, with what I've got right now. So having said all this, be at peace. Consider what I've said. And if you want to know more, if you want to chat, I'm here for that. Be powerful, enjoy your mind. Have a wonderful day. Watch Downton Abbey. Watch every programme insightfully. These programmes are programmes. Most of the stuff that's on television has an agenda. Have a look at how on Netflix and all these platforms, Apple TV, Premiere, Amazon Video, there's a theme to all the films now. Have you noticed how it's changed? Have you noticed the characters? Have you noticed how our newsreaders are changing? Gender control, cultural control, sexuality is changing. It's happening in schools. You must have noticed it. Why? Have you asked? Are you just accepting it? Or are you asking positive questions? Don't go into fear. Don't go into worry. Don't do that. But ask yourself, why is it all going on now? In this second millennium, since the year 2000, the plan was to reset society, to reset the world. People like you and me, we are called useless eaters. The elites, these families, the shadow government consider that we're using up resources that they're entitled to. That's a big statement. Useless eaters. It's not just about food, it's about the consumption of all the world's resources. I've got to be careful what I say here. But the theology, the sociology, the economics, the financial control all comes through mind control, through these programs on television. The media is a propaganda machine. Always has been. It's designed for that during the wars. Give people a white feather. It's a logo. And then they go to war, they're shamed. Don't be ashamed. Step into your power. Enjoy your mind. Have a wonderful day. And as I say, if you want to have a chat, I'm here for that. I'm here to help. And all you have to do is contact me or any of the contact details where you're viewing this presentation. Because I can change your mind. If you want to have it changed, and when you change your mind, you change your life. And you step into your power. Be powerful. God bless.